Hello and welcome to Business Casual. My name is Nanwa. I am your host. And to kick things off on today's episode, we are talking about multicultural marketing, which is truly taking the Canadian marketplace by storm. It seems that nowadays more and more companies are targeting different ethnic demographics and are really pushing their products out there with brand new messaging focused in on these various targets. And here with me to talk about this, about multicultural marketing in further detail, I have to my right, he is the COO and the VP of Client Services for MapleDiversity Communications, Mr. Timothy Yip, as well as the multicultural creative lead for McCann Canada, Waseem Shaikh. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Two veterans in the multicultural marketing space here in Canada.
Thank you so much for having us.
You know, I'm so happy to have you guys because, you know, me being, and just to kind of tell the viewers, you know, my background is heavy into marketing. And, you know, it's interesting to see just how companies are now playing in this space and are now doing it very effectively. And, you know, one thing I sort of want to dive deep on here on today's episode is just the role that multicultural marketing plays and just the evolution as to where we see it going in the future. So, you know, just in general, I would love to just get a sense from both of you guys. Why is marketing and advertising to ethnic communities becoming increasingly important? And Waseem, we'll begin with you.
I think the short answer is because Canada's consumer landscape is changing. But at the same time, I think if you think about it, multicultural advertising is advertising.
Yes.
You know, it's not this new innovative sort of thing that's taken the industry by storm. It's what advertising always has been. It's identifying consumers, mining some insights, and responding to those insights with targeted strategies. The fact that Canada's consumer makeup is changing so drastically means that advertising in Canada has to lean more towards niche advertising.
Timothy, I'd love to get your thoughts.
Absolutely agree with what Waseem said. Canada's very mosaic. And not only are we mosaic, we're all attached to our culture and heritage. That's what makes us unique in Canada, right? Definitely. So if you look at Canada's landscape, you know, 20% are visible minorities, right? And that in that sense, there's targeted media right specifically to those audiences. And we actually, and demographically as well. So, you know, you're not carpet blanketing everyone in Canada. It's very niche, right? So that's so important to the heritage of our culture because we're still consuming that culture as well.
Yeah, and it's actually a great point that you mentioned around culture because, you know, if you think about it, I think about multicultural marketing and the evolution behind it. When I first encountered, I guess, ads, you know, from major companies that were directed towards the South Asian community or even or the Asian community, a lot of it was their current copy, and copy, for those who are not familiar with marketing lingo, is pretty much the words and phrases that you see on an actual marketing on a marketing piece, but just translated in a respective language. And after a while, it seems that that whole method wasn't really working for individuals, and companies actually had to take it a step further with the help of their advertising agencies to really dive deep as to what these messages are all about. How would you describe the evolution of multicultural marketing from then to now?
Absolutely, it has totally drastically changed. Like back in, I would say 5-10 years ago, they would just slap on a quick adaptation with a mainstream image and then have the in-language piece, right? You see that on billboards sometimes, on posters. But now if you look at the landscape, totally changed. So there's insights driven, it's research driven, it's understanding your consumer now, right? So a lot of data has gone into understanding, and brands are spending the time, but more importantly, spending the budgets to understanding these niche markets, to understand what resonates with them. Because ethnic marketers are no different from mainstream marketers. They can see right through any type of marketing message, so long as you're resonating with them, and you have to be authentic. That's the most important key point.
I think it's also, you know, it depends on what your objectives are, what your budgets are as well. Sometimes, based on your objective, based on your consumers, and based on what your mainstream campaign is, it is enough to just do a translation and to do it. That's not the blanket approach that works for all advertising, though, as you've pointed out well. Sometimes, you know, you look at it and you go, your mainstream campaign might be too idiomatic in the sense that it relies on knowledge of the English language or knowledge of Canadian culture, which certain immigrants might not have. In that case, like you said, when you have the data, when you have the insights, you go, well, it might be better to come up with something more bespoke or tailored. And the fact that our mediascape, as Tim pointed out, has sort of drastically sort of blown up, that in itself has lent itself to sort of coming up with more tailored work, because when you have a channel that's broadcasting 24/7 in a certain ethnic language, your English language ad is not going to work there.
Exactly.
So that's where, you know, your adaptations are kind of like the baby step towards multicultural advertising, and then as clients discover the benefits of that, they start looking at saying, hey, well, how about we smart adapt it? You know, like keep the visuals the same image kind of thing, but let's work with a copy that might have more resonance, or let's perhaps take out a few shots and replace it with ethnic talent. And it's it's a progressive thing that people sort of slowly take into it.
Especially, when you look at the different industries, whether it be banking, whether it be telecom, whether it be consumer packaged goods, there's in these competitive industries, the fight for market share is becoming more and more important, and really maintaining that is becoming more and more important. And it seems that now a lot of these companies are tapping into ethnic markets as a way to grow that market share and be more specific around their messaging. I would love, before we cut to break, just to get from both of you a sense to how companies can go about authentically really speaking to these consumers. Because one thing I think about is, you mentioned some of these ethnic channels that are on the air, in your Rogers package, cheap plug. Sometimes it's an ad that, it's a North American ad, but they'll do a little dub track. In Punjabi, Hindi, or Mandarin, whatever. And I'm now sensing that a lot of consumers, especially since I come from an ethnic background, are getting smarter than that. And they're almost not really paying attention to those ads. So I'd love to get both your perspectives on how companies can go about authentically being a part of this conversation. And Tim, we'll begin with you.
No, I think that's a very good point. Being authentic is very key, right? So again, it's understanding your audience is paramount. And also your brand message. Like, what do you want to convey to your audience, right? So if you're a bank, like, are you conveying new bank accounts? Are you new credit for them? Especially when they come into Canada as a new immigrant, first thing you have to do is open up a bank account. So how do you authentically talk to them to opening a bank account, right? What are the perks? What are the values? Are they price driven, right? So those are some key messages that you would need to focus on. If it's a CPG, then what are you trying to build that loyalty, that stickiness, right? So you want them to be the first ones to try your product, love your product, talk about it within their community, right? So you have to be authentic in that way versus a one-off adaptation. And I agree with what Waseem mentioned. Yeah, there's baby steps, obviously, because the brand's not going to spend their full marketing budget on an ethnic marketing campaign. They want to test the waters first to see how it does. But you still have to be really authentic and understanding your audience.
Definitely, Waseem.
Also, I think going back to sort of my earlier point about sort of multicultural advertising being just advertising, it's the same analogy. I mean, you would not expect an English language campaign in Canada to kind of do one Christmas ad in a English newspaper and then call it a day. Or they won't sort of, agree with sort of taking some visuals from, say, a Japanese film and just dubbing it in English and being like, adaptation for the English market. If we can't accept that for the English-speaking market, then really we ought to sort of question it for the multicultural market. And we ought to sort of delve deeper. We talk about demographics. There are psychographics. When we talk about financial institutions, when we talk about telco companies, these are the brands that immigrants will first purchase from when they move to a new country. So are you really talking to them within their psychographic? They're lost. They're looking for guidance. They're looking for a sense of comfort within a new environment. Can you provide that to them with your marketing efforts? Those are the things that sort of become very, very relevant when it comes to sort of really rising above the noise with your competitors as well.
Excellent. Well, when we come back from commercial break, I'd love to get both your opinions on some of the companies that are out there that are doing multicultural marketing right and are being very effective with that. We'll be right back after this brief commercial message here on Business Casual. Back here on Business Casual, my name is Nanwa, and we are talking multicultural marketing and the evolution that this medium has seen within the marketing world. And joining me to talk about this, I have both Tim and Waseem, two multicultural marketing professionals that are doing great work in their respective agencies. And when we were talking earlier, we started giving the viewer a bit of a background as to why multicultural marketing is important and why it's becoming more and more apparent across many different companies. I'd love to really dive a little deeper on that and get both of your opinions on companies right now that are actually doing multicultural marketing right, that are actually going above and beyond and are really speaking to these consumers and are really making a difference and are maybe seeing business results because of it. So Waseem, I'd love to get to know your opinion, being that you've worked with many different clients. Who are some of the companies that you think are really doing an effective job at really playing in this multicultural marketing space?
So I'll steer clear of any of the clients that we have or sort of any of their competitors. But a recent example that I saw that did multicultural really well and probably very differently from what the disciplines that you and I probably practice regularly was Amazon with their sort of the priest and the imam ad. It's not necessarily speaking directly to niche consumers, but it represents them in a way where there was enough brand affinity that was generated from the spot. And it really sort of drove the point home in terms of connecting with consumers that might not typically think of Amazon as a shopping destination, and it really did the trick. I think a similar example was Tim Hortons a couple of years ago when they did the immigrant ad about the African family where the father is sort of getting ready for his family to be arriving to Canada, and he buys all these jackets in Tim Hortons. I think it not only did it sort of build that legend of Canadiana that Tim Hortons sort of leans on so much, but at the same time it sort of really extended to a new breed of consumers, ethnic consumers, immigrant consumers that are coming into the country to be like, this is what Canada is about, and this also sort of incorporates Tim Hortons, the brand, into it.
See, I love both examples because, sort of just what you mentioned, both brands, they sort of used ethnic marketing as a way to sort of develop their total brand message, whether it be Tim Hortons and Canadiana or Amazon and all, but just kind of bringing people together. It's almost as if instead of just targeting specific consumers, they're more so speaking to the fact that, across Canada and in North America, again, the multicultural mosaic has changed, and there's a lot more ethnicities at play, and we need to start speaking to these broader audiences, which is excellent. Tim, what are some examples? And you don't have to mention client examples.
No, I won't. But absolutely, like the last 5-10 years, we've seen multicultural marketing take off, and a lot more brands are doing it well, better than before. One example that I really liked is really Quality Street from Nestle. There's a brand affinity, and they've done their research, they've done their homework, they've done their analysis. There's a brand affinity with Quality Street from back home, for South Asians in India, because it's an imported brand. So what they did was they used their Quality Street product line and targeted specifically for Diwali, which is this festival of lights, which is the celebration for South Asians. So what they did was they customized their tin for happy Diwali celebrations. They also leveraged all the media streams, but also they used grassroots events to really get the chocolates and caramels into the people's hands. So we thought, I personally think that was a very authentic way to for the brand to showcase their products. They had that brand affinity built, but they also expanded it and extended it to all South Asians, and not just South Asians. I think it's all multicultural ethnicities in Canada, and they've done a really good job, and I've seen it year over year, and it's done really well for them.
And to that, I think that's a really great example, and again, it sort of shows the importance around insights, and if you really think about it, when you're thinking about which which ethnic demographics you really want to target, or where you're sort of under indexing that you really want to increase share in. Quality Street, that's a fine example because that was a part of the South Asian sort of culture, right? Was to gift the box of Quality Street. I think another brand that really touched on that was Canada Dry recently as well. They've also increased a lot of their Diwali branding, and they pretty much tapped into that insight in regards to ginger ale being a big part of South Asian people's lives. Which is a great segue. Thanks, Tim, to my next question around occasions. So a lot of big retailers, a lot of big companies are now activating against Diwali, which is a really big South Asian celebration. Chinese New Year is another big one as well. Really activating towards specific occasions to really use their products to sort of enhance the experience of their consumers during these different occasions. I'd love to sort of get your thoughts when it comes to why companies have decided to go this route and what they should maybe keep in mind, because obviously when you're thinking about occasions, there are some sensitivities involved as well. Waseem, we'll begin with you.
So the first thing you need to sort of keep in mind is that your occasion-based advertising cannot be the only thing you do in the year, because that in and of itself reeks of opportunism. The reason why festivity-based advertising works so well is because it's a win-win on two fronts. It generates brand affinity because you're celebrating with them. It often helps with retail as well, because that's usually when people are making either big-ticket purchases or, in the case of CPG, just purchases for the home, for when guests are coming over and whatnot. In terms of sensitivities, cultural sensitivity is something you really it's the basic before coming into multicultural, whether it's festivity or just an always-on component. But what's important to know is that when you're going to do a festive campaign, know that you are competing with a very vast field of people who are doing advertising at the same time. So if your first idea is to really just give a red packet out for Chinese New Year, or to sort of put a clay lamp out for Diwali, let's think beyond that. Those are not bad. Those are great starting points, but those are the starting points of about 15 other brands at that time. What can you do that sort of really resonates, is unique and authentic? I think that's a word that was thrown around a lot, and it's a very important word. How does it feel emotionally resonant and authentic to the consumer, while sort of not drowning in the noise of sort of other competitors as well?
Yeah, exactly. Some solid points we've seen. Tim?
Absolutely agree. It can't be your one and only campaign throughout the year. People are going to see right through that, and you're competing with so many brands. And if we look at Chinese New Year coming up, Chinese New Year supplement used to be about this thin. In the last 2 years, it's about almost a phone book.
Yeah, it's a phone book.
Like almost every brand is out there saying Happy Chinese New Year.
Yeah,
and as a consumer, you're going to see right through that, right? So again, I absolutely agree. You have to be authentic. You have to stand out. You have to have something that connects you with your ethnic consumers, saying, so it's not just a one-off money grab.
Yes.
It's not an opportunity, right?
Yeah,
So that's something that I think most brands and most marketers are aware of because, just like Boxing Day, everyone's saying 50% off, right? So how do you stand out and be authentic in your way as well?
Some awesome thinking around the table. We do have less than a minute left. I just quickly want to get maybe a one-liner as to where you think the future of multicultural marketing is going to go. Tim, we'll begin with you.
I think it's going to go exponentially. It's going to blow up for sure. If you look at Canada's landscape right now, there's 250,000 newcomers coming to Canada every single year. So if you look at Canada's existing population, almost 35 million, it's 250,000 of new immigrants coming to Canada, and they all have tailored messaging and cultures. So, from an acquisitions perspective, that's huge, right? So as a brand, as a telco, as a financial institution, that's an acquisition opportunity for me, right? So we see that as an opportunity for Canada as a whole, because that's going to just grow every single year, and you're going to see that as a big opportunity for most brands.
All right, Waseem.
Amalgamating into sort of your umbrella campaign strategies, I think hopefully, and I think it's going to happen, is at some point we're going to stop thinking of sort of multicultural as the add-on after we have developed the entire campaign. Hopefully we will understand that these are just 1/5 of our consumers. We will have the insights, we will have the sub-segments within the market to really sort of understand how to nuance that thing. So it's not just about a South Asian consumer, it's about sort of, is it Indian, is it Punjabi, Tamil, Muslim speaking, Urdu, Bengali, like how do you sort of differentiate these sub-segments? That I think at some point will be part of the C-suite discussions when we see that, we're planning this campaign and for example, if you're a premium brand, the investor class Chinese immigrants just happen to be the big spenders right now. How do we incorporate them into our larger marketing efforts instead of saying, we have a campaign, how do we make it Chinese?
Excellent. Some definite food for thought here on Business Casual. I want to thank the both of you for joining us to talk about this wonderful topic around multicultural marketing. It's definitely mainstream, and we'll definitely keep an eye on it. We'll be right back after this brief commercial message.